It's the 150th anniversary of the start of the Civil War. You may not realize how deep Civil War history is in Bowling Green, so we found out what it means to this town when it comes to forts, hills, and the railroad.
Bowling Green was significant during the Civil War because of the railroad. The railroad had been completed in the fall of 1859. It connected Louisville, Nashville, and Memphis, which were the three major towns of the Upper South.
The railroad connected the upper industrial towns of the Ohio River with the lower Mississippi.
It was the way of moving men and goods. The rivers and the railroad were kind of the I-65 of that period, and thus they were extremely important to both sides. It put Bowling Green in jeopardy during the Civil War. Both sides wanted to control Bowling Green because they could control that railroad.
Bowling Green at the time sat in a low-lying area surrounded by hills.
Both armies fortified the hills so they could not only see the railroad as it went through Bowling Green, they could see it for miles in any direction, so they could tell if there was anything coming towards this town. 10,000 men, depending, marching down an unpaved road stir up a tremendous amount of dust. They could see an army coming. From the hills, they could all see a train coming. They could guard the train. They could see anybody who might intend to destroy the railroad tracks.
One of those forts still stands, Fort Webb. There were 6 to 7 of these forts in Bowling Green.
You can see where the Confederates had cut down trees and piled them up and put a little mud over them.
It may not seem like much of a fort from modern day standards, but it was a great place to look out and even hide from the enemy. But there's one bit of information about the Civil War in Bowling Green that many people may not know.
I'm beginning to think that we will not have any fighting here this winter. Neither army shows any disposition to advance.
There were no battles in Bowling Green. There was one constantly expected. Now, the day the last Confederates left here, the Union soldiers arrived on the other side of the river, and they did a little bombardment until they realized that the Confederates were gone.
You may have heard someone call Bowling Green the Confederate capital of Kentucky. While it was named that, it can be misleading because the Confederates were not here as long as the Union Army.
The Confederates arrived in Bowling Green on the 18th of September of 1861, and they left here on Valentine's Day of 1862.
So just a few months for the Confederates, but years of occupation by the Union Army.
The Union Army came in here the day that the last Confederates left, that is Valentine's Day of 1862, and they were here for the remainder of the war.
Today we crossed the Big Barren and are now in Bowling Green. The rebels burned $1 million worth of stores but left enough pork, salt beef, and other necessaries to supply our division for a month. In fact, the cigar I'm smoking, the paper on which I write, the ink and pen were all captured.
This town was under military occupation from mid-September of 1861 until sometime in the summer of 1865.
If you would like to know more about Bowling Green during the Civil War from someone who actually lived through it and wrote about it, you can check out Josie Underwood's Civil War Diary, which is edited by Nancy Baird. Plus, if you're looking for even more Civil War information here locally, the Bowling Green Civil War 150th anniversary event will be held on September 17th, so mark your calendars. It will kick off at 8 that morning at the L&N Depot. Events will be all day at the Historic Rail Park, Lost River, Riverview at Hobson Grove, Kentucky Museum, and Downtown Merchants Association. WBKO and Bowling Green Convention and Visitors Bureau are sponsoring the event.